Hey, what's up, everybody? I am Mangoose. You are awesome, and welcome to this little stream we're going to do. I'm just going to run some background of old casting calls in the background, and then we're going to talk about some stun stuff because you guys had a lot of very interesting things to talk about when it came to that stun video that I did. I've also got Sockap with me today, but if you guys want to join, just hit up my Discord. Join my Discord. I linked it in the before, and I'll just pull people in one by one to come and discuss anything you want to talk about as far as stuns go. So let me bring up my Discord here in case anybody wants to jump in. And of course, we'll respond to comments as well. So I think one of the biggest things I left out, one of the biggest, most important things I left out when it came to talking about stuns was how other games have ways, and several people brought this up. Let me grab something here. I wrote some shit down old school style.
What's up, everybody?
They were talking about CC immunity items for so like in Smite you've got the anal beads or the purification beads, whatever the hell you want to call them. I always call them anal beads because it's funnier. And then like Dota, you have BKB, LOL. Sockap, you play LOL a lot. Do they have anything that negates CC, makes you CC immune in LOL?
Yeah, you have. So there's two things that I know of off the top of the head. Is that normally I don't like really play squishy role in League of Legends, so I don't really build this item too much. But there's Quicksilver, which is like an item. It's not a full item. It's an item that gets built into another item, but it cleanses any sort of CC. You also have a summoner spell that you can take called Cleanse, which will also cleanse you of any CC or slow. And then they have a type of boot that you can buy that gives you magic resist, and it also reduces the duration of slows and stuns and stuff like that. And they also just have a stat in the game called Tenacity, and you can buy you can run like certain runes that give you more tenacity during certain situations, and that will, the more tenacity you have, the less you're affected by stuns. So there's a lot of ways to deal with it in League.
It's stuff that Paragon really didn't have much of. I mean, they had like Purity Sensor, Hunter's Guile. After version 42, I'm not sure what cards they had, but there was very little in the way in Paragon to counteract CC, and I think that was a big part of the problem why CC felt so bad in Paragon. I mean, there was the problems I listed in that video yesterday, but there was even more than that, and you guys brought that up to my attention, and I appreciate it. Real quick, what's up, Empty? Why not? Go Curd, Go Curd. Colton Wright, Punkanava plays, and Gathison, what's up? How you doing? Cleanse does not work if you were in stun, but someone else could cleanse you of stuns. Yeah, you had to preempt it. Like Hunter's Guile, if you saw a Rampage Rock coming, you could activate it and avoid the stun. But if you were already stunned, it didn't cleanse the stun for you. That is absolutely right. Richter says, "Hey, we've got Richter in the chat. Richter himself. Richter hook shouldn't slow. It should just execute an enemy, including player who's below 80% of their max health." God damn. That's a little overpowered. I agree, though. I think Sockap's also a huge Richter fan.
Yeah, his ult should just one-shot anybody that's in it, I think.
It should just one-shot the core.
Yeah. It's too bad. I always wish that they made him scale better off of like ability power, because you've got a character in League called Blitzcrank that actually kind of scales off of ability power. Most people build him tank, but if you want to get trolly, you can build him ability power. And his ult's kind of like Richter's in a certain sense, but you can kind of one-shot people sometimes if you get really fed. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I need to play more LOL. I dabble in it.
No, you don't.
Yeah. I played some Dota.
Yeah, League will make you hate yourself. If you hate yourself, go ahead and give it a try. But if not, then
Punk. I thought that was like an Indian name. I was trying to pronounce it all Indian and shit. Stupid me.
I think the problem with Paragon CC was that they you know, they had Purity Sensor, right, which was like an AoE cleanse, which was which was amazing. You know, it might have been like a little bit too strong,
Right.
because like a lot of people don't know. Like I had a buddy that played support, and he was so good at using purity sensor, like, and it really turned fights. And at the time the purity sensor was out, there wasn't like I mean, there's still like a lot of CC, but it wasn't like crazy, you know.
Yeah.
So like certain ults, like Countess ult did not, if it got cleansed, it just did not do damage, like, because it was tied to the root. So
Right.
she rooted you, and if you cleansed it, you know, her ult just wouldn't go off. You know, there wasn't like a steel ult that stunned, or a Countess ult that went off around that guy, or an Aurora ult or anything like that. So, but then they kind of nerfed it, and they made it like a single cleanse card that didn't really give you any stats that you would want on anybody. So it just kind of became like useless to buy. Plus they just added so many stuns that it wasn't really an efficient buy, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it to have the cleanse over just like more damage or more armor or anything like that. So it just wasn't good. And plus, like, the CC itself, adding so much CC made certain characters kind of less viable. Like Sereth lost a lot of efficiency on her Q, because there was just so many stuns no matter what on the enemy team after they added like a stun to Wukong, and, you know, all those other stuns that they added. I think they made it too, like Rampage Rock, you didn't even have to hit it exactly, like it broke on the ground and it would still stun if somebody was near it. So, you know, just certain characters like Sereth, she'd Q and avoid a CC and then just get hit by another CC right out of her Q, and it's like, okay, well, she's just kind of nerfed to the ground now because of this.
And one of the things I was talking about in the video was inconsistency on how the stuns interacted with various ultimate abilities. Like Countess, you know, she would, if the root was applied and then you stunned her ult went on full cooldown. Whereas Aurora, her ult would go on a soft cooldown if you stunned her, because her ultimate didn't do anything, and that makes sense. However, when you had Richter, if you hunched forward, got stunned, and, you know, before the chesticles came out and any status effect was applied, it would go on a hard cooldown, and I didn't like that at all. I didn't like that it was inconsistent across the heroes, and I'm pretty sure that applied to a few other people. Somebody was saying in the Manic Eater, I think it was saying that it kind of makes sense for their kits. I don't think their kits should matter that much. I think it makes sense between Countess and Aurora, the soft cooldown versus the hard cooldown, because, you know, I really, actually, you know what? I don't think Countess's ult should have gone on hard cooldown if she didn't apply any damage. I don't know.
So I'm
they
a
just
big
needed
advocate.
to pick one.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate. So like Gideon's ult was the same as Aurora's. Like when he started going up in the air and you stunned him, it would go on the soft cooldown and it'd be back up in a few seconds. Yeah. Which I don't like that. I mean, I think that if you make the choice to commit to using an ult, like you need to do it smart, because, you know, it basically makes it so like if they have abilities to get put on soft cooldown, I remember before that change was a thing, you know, playing as like Decker support or whatever in a team fight, you know, you could tell a good support by them holding stuns in a team fight for like key abilities, and then that just takes it out. It's like, okay, well then he's just gonna re-ult, you know, after a few seconds, and it doesn't matter if you stun him. So I mean, I think that as soon as you press R, if you get stunned or stuffed, you know, that ability, whatever ability it is, as soon as you press it, needs to be stuffed and put on full cooldown, because that's how it is in most MOBAs anyway. It just makes it so it's more of a you have to be more skillful when you use your abilities, I guess.
I remember a game where I interrupted Aurora 3 times in one team fight. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, like you could always tell when Aurora was sharking around for her ultimate. You know, I came in, I hit her with the shock therapy and silenced her, and she, you know, glacial charged away. And then she tried again. I caught her with the hook. My team wasn't able to kill her before she got away. And then she tried it again. I finally hit her with the ultimate, and then they finally killed her. That's insane. That shouldn't be allowed. And that entire time, I couldn't really play Richter the way Richter is meant to be played, because I had to always keep something off of cooldown to interrupt that Aurora so she didn't take out our entire team with her ultimate. It just kind of feels bad, you know?
Yeah, that's why I was so sad when they removed Purity Sensor, because it was just like a wonderful card to have for team fights.
That's another thing. A lot of people brought this up, is that the CC cards, even pre version 42, were their anti-CC cards were tied to affinities, so you had to be either growth or order in order to even have access to those cards. And I mean, Hunter's Guile was the only one in growth, and that was only an individual thing. But I think that is definitely another problem that Paragon had, was that the CC immunity cards were all tied to affinities that not everyone had access to. So that's a good point that everybody brought up in the comments on that video.
I honestly, I hope that, Core and Predecessor and all these people that are doing, remakes or their own version of Paragon, like they need to be careful. I know they were talking about Core doing like diminishing returns. Yeah. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea, although it's kind of like, I feel like that's kind of harder to put into the game, instead of just having like a healthy amount of stuns and then just giving you options on how to, get out of CC. Because like when it's talking about League, you've got like 4 or 5 options. Like that's enough right there to deal with a heavy CC team. You have enough options to build for that.
Yeah, that's something RGS Ace actually brought up. Was he was saying that as far as, because I thought it was a good idea to have diminishing returns on crowd control, but what he brought up was, if you have inconsistency in the stun durations, and then that's going to lead to player frustration. Like if you think that your stun is going to last 2 seconds on somebody and it lasts 1 second because they just got CC'd by something else, then that could definitely lead to some player frustration and not being able to plan around that kind of thing. So that's definitely a good argument against diminishing returns. I still think diminishing returns would probably be a decent thing. However, the only time I've really dealt with diminishing returns was PvP in World of Warcraft, and I played a rogue, so I knew my way around the diminishing returns. But
I'm pretty sure in that game, didn't you have like a ton of stuns as a rogue? Like, couldn't you just kind of keep somebody locked down by yourself for a long time?
I mean, diminishing returns would eventually set in, and you couldn't keep them locked down forever. But yeah, you could keep them locked down for quite a long time, as long as you were, good with it. Let's see. Cha in chat says he thinks Aurora should have a soft CD as it has a stupid animation. Yeah, it was incredibly easy to interrupt Aurora because she did just kind of jump above everybody and spin around. So it was like painting a giant target on her head. However, I think she needs, that's kind of the staple of a MOBA, is knowing who has that stun. Somebody baits out that stun, and then the other person comes over the top with their ultimate and finishes everything off. So I think it's rewarding if you can plan around somebody else's CC and still get off your ultimate. But that's just my thoughts.
It's risk reward though, because you got to look at it. I mean, obviously, I think Cha probably played Aurora, or maybe that was the character that he played. But you have to have risk reward, right? Because that ult is one of the strongest team fight ults in the game, right? So like that and Gideon, those things, in my opinion, should not have soft CD on it, because you need to make the active choice of when to use that ult to turn a team fight. And if you can just re-ult because you just did it willy-nilly, then it's just there's no risk in that. It's just you running in and just using, especially if you build like tank or something on Aurora, and then it's just like, okay, well, they're not going to kill me if I whiff my ult twice, because I'm just going to be so tanky that, eventually I'll just get it off in a team fight and we'll be good. And it's just not, I don't think that that's a a good way to have it.
Yeah, I didn't think it was healthy. Let's see. Oh yeah, guys, if you want to, if you have something to say on the topic and you want to come in, I'll link my Discord here. I'll pull you up into the champagne room with Sockap and I, and you can voice your opinions, and and then I'll send you on your way. But I'll bring people in one at a time if you want to come in and talk to us. Just join the Discord, head into the Mongoose mob. Oh, you'll get the champagne later, Sockap. And then I'll pull you into my private channel, and we'll have a talk. Let's see some Nick Tana suggested more items for stuns. We've already kind of covered that, kind of talked about that. Just more cards, items, whatever you want to call them in general. Locale Football, or LaSalle, I don't know how to say that, is talking about having cards that reduce stun duration. I think we talked about that a little bit too, or CC duration. That's there was some of that in Paragon, but not a lot. And then there was the one card. What was that card called? Where the more stuns you ate, you got like a big heal afterwards. I used to use that on Richter a lot.
Shoot, it's got like the picture of the Minotaur on it. I can't remember, but yeah, that that card was very, very strong on tanks, obviously, because and actually, if you built like enough armor, certain stuns would just heal you, so you get more health out of it than you would lose from the actual stun itself. Which honestly, like, I thought that card was a decent way of dealing with stuns. The unfortunate thing is that it really was only useful on tanks, so it was more of just like a tank anti-CC. Unbroken Spirit, that's what it was.
Yeah. And, LaSalle Football was talking about less damage taken while stunned, not reduce the stun duration. So that's cool. That's a cool idea. I would like to see that in the game. And then,
I don't know. I definitely don't think that they should add any. I know for a while Paragon had some cards that basically gave you CC, like back in Legacy Shockwave.
Yeah.
Was one, and I know like Richter players would just like run up, Shockwave somebody, knock them up, then hook them and ult them or whatever it was,
Yeah, that makes for an easy hook, yeah.
Yeah, that was just a little bit too strong. They ended up getting rid of it. So I think like having CC on cards or items is, maybe a slow is fine, but like having a hard CC on those is just not that great, I don't think.
It's odd that they would introduce cards that gave you more CC without introducing cards that countered CC,
Right.
You know what I always thought was weird about Hunter's Guile and Purity Sensors? If you activated it at the right time, you could just walk through Decker's cage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love that.
That seemed like a strange interaction right there.
It counted as like a micro stun, so they just made it, or I think that's how they coded it, because if you hit it, you got like stun for like half of a second or a quarter of a second or something like that. So, and that was the thing too, since it was a AoE stun immunity. Like if you were on comms with your team, I've had, we've had situations where I was playing with my stack and we got caged, like 3 of us, and he's like, all right, I'm popping it now, and all 3 of us just walked out of it.
Like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Netty Ice in chat. The problem is that is a horrible, horrible beer, by the way. The problem with stuns wasn't actually stuns. Epic didn't diversify their CC and status effects enough. They had little or no use of fears, silences, taunts, etc. I think that's a good point. I would like to see some fears, silences, sleeps, that sort of thing in these newer games. That would be kind of cool to see. Sleep is usually an effect that is very rewarding for a team that's coordinated, but kind of sucks if they're not. Like an effect that, you go to sleep, but as soon as you take damage, you come out of it. If you have a team that's able to just avoid dealing damage to that person until you got them surrounded, that's always a fun effect, I think. And then fear, I'm not sure. Does LoL have fear? I don't know. The only fear I know is in Warcraft, where you run around like crazy if you get feared.
Yeah, they have it in League. Actually, the character I one trick Urgot, and his ult, which you would appreciate, is like a giant, kind of like a giant Richter hook, sort of. But what it is it's not actually like a hook. If they're at like 25% or lower, if you hit them with it, it's an execute, and it pulls them to him, and then he has like a bunch of saws that come out of his stomach, and he just like grinds them up, and it kills them. And then anybody around where they die gets feared for I think a second and a half. So they all slowly run away from wherever it went off, which is it's a pretty strong CC. There's a few characters that have like fear, and there's also charm, which is the opposite of fear, which brings them, makes them walk towards you.
Oh, kind of like taunt.
Right, and then taunt will make them auto attack you, walk towards you. So they definitely have a lot. They have sleep in League 2 on one character. So
Yeah, I would definitely like to see some more diversity in the crowd control effects in Paragon. Hopefully they can add some of that in. What about Gideon's stun? Yeah, Gideon should not have had a stun.
yeah,
Why did they add that on Gideon? Like, that shit was already strong. You know what used to piss me off bigger than anything is when I would see like an ADC get caught in Gideon's ultimate and try and run out of it. It's like, dude, just turn around and shoot him. Like, he's right there. Just shoot him.
Yeah, that was another thing too. It's like Gideon. I always felt like Gideon's ult was strong enough as it is. Having like a small pool into the center, and they obviously Gideon was pretty squishy, so they had to use it right for it to be effective. But then they just made it a 3-second stun, and it's just like, okay, now you can just dive in whenever you want to, no matter what the situation is, and just stun everybody.
Yeah. They definitely dumbed Paragon down as it went along.
Taylor Vance, what is the soft stun? They have soft like CC, which would be like, a slow, even a root in a certain sense that roots you in place, but you can still use abilities, might be considered soft. But slows definitely would be a soft CC.
I think anything that doesn't interrupt would be considered a soft CC.
Mm-hmm. So
that's the way I view it. Let me see if we had any more suggestions here. Countess said that in the comments that if you stun that there shouldn't be any hard cooldowns, because if you stun somebody, you should kill them. I kind of agree with that and kind of don't. There's situations like I was talking about, like I remember specifically, and I was on Decker, and there was a whole team fight, so it was like, the teams are kind of, got a line of scrimmage and you're pushing back and forth. Morgesh was trying to ult somebody in the back, and I threw a stasis bomb over everybody and popped her in the face. And she just she got stunned, got up, walked away a little bit, and then just ulted again before my stun could come off cooldown. And there's no way anybody could get through the entire team to kill her off before she, while she was under the stun effect from stasis bomb. But that kind of stuff I didn't care for.
Yeah, that's another thing that should be put on cooldown when she's in the animation. I mean, full cooldown. So, in my opinion, anyway, it's just any of those soft CDs just like it just takes, in my opinion, it just takes away the skill of the game, because then you don't have to be smart when you use your abilities, which I feel like you should be smart using any ability in the game. So, but
yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. It doesn't feel it feels more rewarding whenever you set up a good ultimate if you are smart about it and either come in behind everybody or I remember a particularly good Narbash that I played against. He would always have somebody between him and me when I was on Richter whenever he was doing his ultimate, and there was no way I could get to him to either silence him or hook him or anything. And that was just smart play on his part, and that was just I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think it feels better to make a smart play than to play a powerful hero, if you know what I mean.
Right. And I mean, and they can always do something like, I don't think that it's I mean, honestly, like I don't like this idea, but you know, some people that might complain, they're like, oh, you know, my ult just gets stuffed all the time, blah blah blah, when I'm playing Gideon or Aurora or something like that. They can always have somebody like Gideon who has like a channeled ult, you know, that puts himself like in risk, have him be like immune to CC for like the first second or whatever, and not have it like stun. Obviously, have it be like his old ult, but that way, like, you know, they can at least get some of it off. But you know, not once it gets put on cooldown, it's done. You know,
Yeah.
so
A lot of people are suggesting too that ultimates be CC immune. I think that's kind of a smite thing. I don't think I like that at all.
yeah, I'm not particularly fond of the idea either. I think like we were talking about, there shouldn't be any soft CCs. It's just if you start to use it and you get stuffed, it's that's it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things that just that Paragon just they kind of did their own thing. So it's almost like the devs just said like fuck it, YOLO, you know, like with every major decision. And like I remember there was one community corner where Cam said something along the lines of like, well, you guys just didn't really understand this mechanic of the game, so we just dumbed it down for you. And it's like, okay.
Okay, buddy.
I mean, we did, but you know, that's fine. Way to call your player base stupid.
Yeah, I know, right? I remember I asked them once. I went and I submitted it as a bug that Richter's stun went on full cooldown, and I gave them the examples, like how, you know, their stated thing was that if the ultimate, you know, applied no status effects or damage, then it should go on a soft cooldown. I was like, well, what about Richter? His doesn't. And they were like, just gave me the same response. Like I explained to them that Richter, you know, if you get stunned during his hunch, then it does no status effects or damage. Then why does it go on a full cooldown? And they were just like, if it does status effects or damage, then it goes on a soft cooldown. You know, I was like, you just said their same shit back to me. You obviously didn't read what I wrote at all and just gave me an automated response, and it pissed me off.
Yeah.
I can't even talk about it. I'm so angry. I'm still mad about that.
Yeah.
YouTube does that shit too. I don't know if you ever tried to talk straight to YouTube, but yeah. They do the same crap.
I mean, I don't think that I ever really talked to the devs too much when the game was coming out, but I definitely was pretty vocal about all the bad decisions in the game.
Yeah.
As it was slowly dying. It was basically like, you know, the game was in the hospital for like a very curable cancer, and then they're like, hey, you know, let's just pull the plug on this, or let's just make it worse over a short period of time. You know, just kept doing more and more and more like messed up decisions. So,
and people were telling them what they wanted and everything, and just nobody at Epic seemed to listen. And
right,
like, and they would just do weird shit, like giving Wukong a stun.
Yeah,
keeping us on the stun topic here. Like, why? Why did they give him a stun? Was he not strong enough? I mean, come on.
Right.
I don't know. It's just some weird stuff. Gideon, like giving the Gideon ult a stun, like we already talked about, like that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I kind of pieced out after version 42 for real. Like I played it for about a month, and then I quit for a while, and then came back when they announced that it was closing.
Yeah, it was just. And I mean, you look at those types of decisions, and like Gideon having a, what was it, 3.5 second stun, right?
Yeah,
I think on his ult, and you have to wonder, like, for one, like, why did they make that decision? Because there's no other champ that has. I think the highest was a 2-second stun. You know, 2-second stuns were the highest besides Gideon, and so they give him one that's almost twice as long. When the game is at a state where it's pretty bursty, so if you get hit by a 2-second stun anyway, you're more than likely dead unless you're playing a tank.
Yeah.
And they make it a it's like the size of a dinner plate, like it's like a huge AoE stun, and they give them 3.5 seconds. Like, who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah, I know, right? You can work your ass off, land this skill shot with Rampage and get 2 seconds on your stun, or you can just pop your ultimate and stun everybody for 3.
Right. Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's just ridiculous. So, but
Ace is in the chat talking about Gideon had an OP stun on his ult and still wasn't a comp pick and still had a really low win rate. I wonder why that is. I didn't when Gideon had the stun, I really didn't play that much, to be perfectly honest. I'd already pieced out on Paragon by that time. Came back for the nostalgia of it, but
I feel like he got picked a little bit, but he still wasn't like a crazy strong. It's just because they had other characters that were stronger, like Wraith. If we're going to talk about CC, the rewind is essentially a CC, right? Yeah. And that's essentially a longer range Richter hook that goes through walls that cannot miss. Like that's an insanely strong CC. And I remember for a while, I think it was NATO's second Splinter that were running it. They were running Richter Wraith dual lane, and like I remember talking to people about it, and they're like, "Oh no, it wasn't that bad." And it's like, look, dude, like if you played against like some grandmasters that were running that, like you got rewind with Wraith, and it was 100% guaranteed hook from Richter out of that rewind. Like if they timed it right, they literally could not miss it. It was 100% guaranteed. So you talk about how strong that is. You could drag somebody as they're running from a jungle gank, you could drag them all the way back from their T1 to your T1, and just one person. That's so dumb.
Yeah, that's pretty stupid. That's almost as stupid as FaZe and Narbash combos.
Yeah,
the unkillable duo.
Mm-hmm.
That was some pretty crazy shit. That was another good combo with them too. Is FaZe would hit you with that energy lance that went for fucking ever, and was actually a small AoE on the end of it. And that would root you, and then Narbash would just thunk you, and then you were fucking done for.
Mm-hmm. They just blind you while Narbash ult was going off. If they had a stun, that way they wouldn't be able to, hit it.
Yeah,
very well.
There was a lot of crazy comps there at the end of Paragon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I didn't run into too many of them.
And there was what you're talking about, the people running FaZe Narbash, where they had the regen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think like Narbash got close to like 100 regen per second, depending on what items were built. But I remember there was a streamer that was playing the game. This is when I knew Fortnite was taking over, because he was playing Paragon and somebody was doing that against him.
Yeah.
And it was a FaZe. He's playing Feng Mao, and he was at their inhib, and a FaZe Narbash just like face tanked the inhib the entire time, killed him under it, his own inhib, as he's playing Feng Mao, a character that has a shield built into his kit, and then they just took the inhib without any minions. And they were under the inhib for like over a minute, and then he was just like, you know what? Fuck this. And he just like logged off and then just opened up Fortnite and fired it off.
Oh, that sucks. That hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
Oh, we got Roland up in the mob. Roland, you want to come down and say something? I'll pull you down here. Looks like he is. There we go. What's up, Roland? You got something to say? Guess not. He doesn't have his mic on. Bye, Roland. You're going back to the Mongoose Mob. I used to play with Roland a lot. He was played a pretty mean twin blast. Pretty mean twin blast indeed.
I think this isn't really like necessarily focused on stuns, but just there's, I guess, so many gameplay decisions that got made that were catering to kind of entry level people coming into the game. this is a nice way of just saying people that were bad, but like, it doesn't matter what skill level you are. In my opinion, like when I first started playing Paragon, one of the things that kind of got me interested in it was, for one, I had never played a MOBA before. Two, I was like, well, this is a PvP game that, graphically like looks wonderful and just seems to have like a pretty solid amount of strategy in it, so I was definitely very, very interested in it in that sense. But then, they just decided to take all these little interactions out and obviously like make the game new player friendly while kind of removing a lot of the skill gaps. I hope all these games that come out, really are kind of geared towards making it more of a higher level gameplay wise, adding enough stuff into it to make a skill gap. So my fiance is laughing at me because I'm nerding up. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to balance from the top down. Make everything, fun, easy to pick up, hard to play, and that would be absolutely perfect if they could do it.
Yeah.
Roland, do you want down here? If you want down here, join back up in the mob, and I'll put you in, Roland.
Yeah, he looks very fly right now. That like this, so I really don't like League. I've been playing it since Paragon died, pretty much. I really don't enjoy it though, just because like I can't. There's no immersion like there was on Paragon. Like Paragon, like when you do something, you feel it. Like if I shotgun somebody with Murdoch, like I feel that. In League, when I do an ability, I'm just like, oh, I hit it, or like, oh, I missed it. There's just nothing. There's no immersion to it. So like, I really liked Paragon for that, but these other games like League that I've been playing, it's just nice to be able to play something where like everything that I do has an impact. If I farm poorly, that has an impact, or if I farm well, that has an impact, which it just didn't have in Paragon.
Mm-hmm.
If I build right, talking about stuns, if I build right to mitigate like a heavy CC comp team that I'm playing against, and I build right, and it helps win a team fight, like that's awesome. You just couldn't do that in Paragon. So it's just like I just really I think that both Omeda and Metabuff are I know Metabuff has said, both of them have said that they are kind of catering towards a higher level play. So we'll have to see when it comes out what mechanics are in it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I am definitely very, very excited to get back into playing this game in a non-vegetated state. So
looks like we've got Babe Suki in here. Let's bring Babe Suki down and see what they got to say.
Oh god, he's gonna troll me.
I hope so.
What's up, Suki?
One sec. Chicken.
He's in the bathroom.
What the hell? So, basically, did you have anything you wanted to add to the conversation, or did you want us to just let us know that you were in the bathroom?
No, I don't wanted to. But like, if you look at other games, like they're really short cooldowns. Whatever game, MOBA games you're looking at, there isn't any games that allow NCCs that are like up to 10 seconds. So like, still, shield smack. Bellica stun into like whatever else after that. What equate into easy like 10+ second ult, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's something I mentioned in the video is you could keep somebody stunned indefinitely in Paragon if you really, if you really wanted to. I mean, not much reason to. Like if you're like trying to keep somebody stunned so they can't use their ultimate during a team fight, and you can't end that team fight in 10 seconds while they're stunned, then there's other problems that you have.
Yeah, like I think small fixes like for like variants of like how long you've been stunned for a duration is like either get rid of these 2-second times that everyone has that add up to 10, or like while the stun, like heavily, like so the game will recognize that they're being heavily stunned in a duration of like 15 seconds, and make them a little bit like give them an inherent like armor to like damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So something like if I've been stunned for 4+ seconds, I get damage a lot less than I would because I'm just getting free damage done. You know what I mean?
That's RGS Ace in chat talking about he doesn't understand why people there's a lot more stuns in like something like League and everything, and doesn't understand why people were so frustrated with Paragon. We were talking about that earlier. In League there's more ways to counter stuns than Paragon had.
Right.
We were talking about that with the items and the cards and everything. So hopefully we'll get some more items and stuff that can counter the stuns. Babesuki, I'm going to move you back into the Mongoose mob. And we got Zeus Cut Loose has something to say. There we go. We got Zeus Cut Loose in here. What do you have to add to the conversation?
I think the one thing I'm really looking forward to in the games is just the mechanics of like the Decker stun. Like I got my Decker down well, and it seems like as soon as I get it down well, it would end up changing again. And I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, they broke Decker, and I was so sad because she was my first mastery, I believe. She was my first mastery. I loved playing Decker, and then when they broke Stasis Bomb, she was just pretty useless except for Containment Defense, and then Containment Defense was kind of useless too because people could just jump out of it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know what was really crazy is right when the map changed and they started mixing the mechanics a little bit. Remember that first Decker ball that I threw, and I'm like, when they increased the speed on it, it's just like, oh my gosh, it just took off, man. And when you hit it, like, poof, it was a good feeling. Missed the stuns, man. I missed the stun.
Yeah, I missed.
It was definitely
for real.
Yeah, I mastered her too. I really enjoyed her, but it definitely was, the stun was pretty wonky there at the end. I know if you like caught like the edge of a tower, it would almost always just bounce straight up. Like if you caught it with the bounce on the edge of the tower or bounce back like towards you, you could do some like really, it was kind of unreliable there at the end, unfortunately.
Yeah, just
every once depressing.
You would throw it, hit somebody.
Putting the time in and mastering it, it's like, dedicate all this time to her. I'm like, oh man, I found this support character to play ADC, and I'm like, wow, I never saw myself playing Decker, but then it was very satisfying at first. But at the end, if you caught the wrong part of the map, it was just, you didn't know where it was going.
Yeah, not only that, but somebody be walking straight towards you, you'd hit them directly in the face with the stasis bomb, and it would do jack shit sometimes.
Yeah.
I always, overestimate that and say 75% of the time, but it was probably about 10% of the time her stun just, would hit somebody and not go off and wouldn't stun them. And that was a huge problem that they never really addressed.
Right. So I wanted to say something about Ace's comment about how League has more stuns. So just touch up on that for a second. Is that it does have more characters that have stuns, but the ratio of stuns per character is a lot lower than Paragon was. Paragon, I think, and I can't remember the exact number now, but there was only like around 6 or 8, I think, characters that didn't have some form of CC or hard CC. Whereas in League, there's a lot of characters that don't have any CC or very, very minor CC. But most champs kits aren't super CC heavy unless you're playing like there's a few tanks and supports that have some pretty heavy CC, but as well as like you said, Mongoose, there's a lot of ways to deal with that CC as well. Yeah. So I think that's why people don't complain about it in League and complain about it in Paragon, is because Paragon, you pretty much were guaranteed to have a CC heavy comp no matter what, whereas in League you can pick comps that are kind of catered to what you want to do. If you want to have like a dive comp, you can have a dive comp. If you want to have a CC heavy comp, you can have that. If you want to have a bunch of assassins, you can have that. It's a lot more versatile in the ways that you can build your team comp. And Paragon was just kind of like pick CC and win, you know.
I'm trying to think of heroes that didn't have CC at all in Paragon. The only one I can think of right now is Shinbi. Sparrow, Shinbi, Sparrow.
Yeah. Something like Kalari just had a slow. Let me look up the list of.
Yeah, good point, Ace. But I mean, if Paragon would have kept that ratio going for 10 years, then we would just have thousands and thousands of stuns. But yeah, can you think of any more that didn't have any CC whatsoever? We got Shinbi, Sparrow.
Gadget just had a slow. Muriel just had a slow.
Well, I'm talking like no stun, slows, anything, any form of CC.
Okay, nothing at all.
The only ones I can think of are Shinbi and Sparrow. Yeah, I think that's about it. Everybody else had at least a knockback or something. I think it's very important how long stuns are, how many characters in party can have it. Because in some Paragon patch where Aurora can stun, stunks. We got party full of control tank, but yeah. You can make very, very heavy CC parties in Paragon, but I mean you could do that in a lot of games.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Ace. That a lot of them coming out weren't going to have CC, but that's just still an issue that they kept adding CC and releasing CC champs, you know, and that kind of just, if they're going to do that, that's fine, but have ways to deal with that to mitigate CC, which they didn't do. But
all right, Zeus, I'm going to move you back up into the mob. Anybody else that wants to come in and chat with us, go ahead, join up on Discord right there. Join one of my chat channels, and I'll move you up into my personal champagne room, also known as the Beat Laboratory.
I feel like a radio host.
Yeah, you should.
Welcome to 89.1 The Goose, taking caller number 1.
I wish I had like both our cameras up so we could make the Decker butt with our heads.
I think it's mostly because 90% of people can't land autos and abilities. Yeah.
They can with multi-shot, Jim.
I hated that gem so much. When I saw somebody use multi-shot, I was like, this carry is probably not going to be too great.
Yeah, I'd never picked it on carries whenever I played it, but it was more of a matter of principle than anything. I'm like, well, damn it, I can aim my shots. I don't need this shit,
No, Iggy did not have a CC unless you built like that one white card that put a slow on abilities.
Yeah. Sunny Jack-O-Lantern, you are correct. Twin Blast also did not have CC in his kit. He did have a little escape there, but yeah, that's right.
For some iterations.
Yeah, some iterations. Yeah, Taylor Vance is right. His grenade had a slow in some iterations.
Yeah.
Which I kind of like that whenever his grenade had a slow.
Yeah, it was such a small slow. It wasn't really like that huge. Johnny says this is off topic, but their flash should be able to use anytime so we can dodge at any moment for people with quick reactions. Yeah, there was Iggy's ult had a knockback before he got reworked. After he got reworked, he didn't have any sort of CC. Johnny, before, like during Legacy, they had like Blink Charm and stuff where you could flash after getting hit, but then they changed all the blinks to being put on CD after you got hit. But the blinks were low cooldown. They were like 12-second cooldown.
Yeah.
So
everything seemed to be focused in Paragon around being aggressive. Like you couldn't really use your blinks after version 42. You couldn't use your blinks defensively. You almost had to use them aggressively.
Right. Blitz Rush was the only one that you could use defensively, but the other ones you couldn't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I mean, Blitz Rush was my favorite card in the game, and honestly, if we're talking about like movement, I think in a 3D MOBA, like movement abilities and blinks and stuff like that should be kind of a good focus on those games, because that's kind of what makes it different than top downs. That's why when I play Smite, I'm just like, okay, why is this a 3D MOBA? I can't aim up or down or anything like that. You know, it just seems like it's 3D on a 2D plane, or it is 3D on a 2D plane is what it is. So it just doesn't, but that's what one of the things that got me into Paragon was like, man, you can blink like straight up. Like, I can't tell you how many times I was playing Bellica against the Gideon and they go to do their rock that comes down, from the sky. And if I didn't want to reposition, but I still wanted to avoid the move, you could just blink straight up through it. And then they'd be looking around like, where the fuck did Bellica go? And then you just come down from the air, stun bomb. You could drop your drone as you were falling on the ground. Like, there's so many cool things you could do. Myth was a good person. I'm the Myth. He was a good person to watch for like cool movement stuff, because a lot of times he would like blink up in the air with Shimby, and then he'd stasis, and then he'd use like her 2 dashes in the air. Like,
holy shit.
He did like a lot of cool movement stuff in the game. He was definitely pretty interested in doing all that stuff, so it's fun to watch him do some crazy stuff.
All right, I'm going to move MOBAs down here, see what they have to say. Let me unmute them. Hey, what's up, MOBAs? You have anything to add to the conversation here? Oh, they just muted themselves.
Hi guys.
Hey, there you are. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. What'd you have to add to the conversation?
Oh, sorry guys, my English so bad I can't say anything. Maybe on English it's hard to me because I am from Russia.
Wait, where's Britic at?
It's so hard for me. Please, not today. Maybe next time.
Okay. You know what? I'll bring Britic on, and you can speak Russian, and Britic can translate for me. That's what we'll do next time, brother.
Okay.
All right, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yep. No worries.
Have a good one, man.
Okay, we got Ali Mal. A laughing my ass off. God damn it. I'm so bad at reading names. All right, what's up, A? You got something you wanted to add to the conversation?
Yeah, so Paragon in general, like the CC heavy heroes were just like badly balanced, right? Like in League and other MOBAs, like if you have a lot of CC in your kit, you generally have like bad mobility, or like you're slow, like you just your move speed isn't very high, you don't deal as much damage. I mean, there's something in your kit that's going to be missing if you have a lot of CC.
Right.
Yeah.
7 Rampage is like, especially like these were probably the worst examples. Kwang too, I guess. Like they just did a lot of damage. They're tanky, good mobility. Like they didn't have anything missing from their kit. They're just the perfect champion, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. Like there's no counters to CC, which was kind of a huge issue. You had like a few items here and there, but it wasn't enough.
Oh, you're definitely right though. I mean, like Rampage, Kwang, all those champs. Like Sevarog was another character that he output like a decent amount of damage for being as tanky as he was. Even Steel, built like damage, or like red zone or whatever you wanted to build on him, could output like an insane amount of damage for the amount of CC he had. Whereas like you take like characters like Nautilus or Braum in League that have like a lot of stuns, and they're tanky, but they don't really output any damage. You can always, of course, like do troll builds in those types of games where you build damage on them, and they can output like a decent amount of damage. But League's very good about making characters that are like CC heavy not have the best scaling on a lot of their stuff, so they just don't really do as much damage as other champs. And of course they're kind of frontliners, so they have to get in there to do stuff, and then they just kind of get murdered when they do. So
yeah, that's a very good point. What drawback did Kwang have? Like he didn't have any, like he wasn't ranged. Maybe that was like his only drawback to using Kwang.
And his escape wasn't like, didn't have an actual movement ability, I guess, but
yeah, True, but I mean, did he need it? He could just hang in there. And...
Oh, he did not.
Yeah.
He'd be broken as hell.
I mean, he had built-in lifesteal in his kit. He had like armor and buff, armor and magic resist or ability buff, and good damage on his autos, good damage on his little electrocute thing, and then he had lockdown and a pretty strong ult. So
he had in-game. I mean, he was missing very little, and like all three of those champions I named, like they really didn't have much missing from their kit.
right.
I would say the only drawback to Sevarog was knowing how to play him, because he was definitely not a hero for beginners. Like, you had to be able to tell your team to fuck off and get your stacks in the early game. But like, if somebody knew what they were doing with Sevarog and you got to late game against that team, then you were done. Like, you were not going to win against the Sevarog unless you had a Wukong that was just going to split push your ass off. But you know what I mean.
He also
like,
really wasn't that hard to play. I mean, like, you just kind of press Q on the minions. And
Right.
the hardest part about him was like actually landing the root. Honestly, like,
right.
Yeah,
it was pretty small.
Yeah, getting his combo right, where it was like either, root, dash in, ult them into your team, or ult them into your team and then root them out of the ult before they can react. Like that was a little bit tricky, but if you played him enough, you get that down. So it wasn't like that crazy. But you're right though, because there's some characters in Paragon, like let's talk about Greystone for an example. Like, he's one of those characters that was, I mean, most people that I feel like most people actually built him like damage at lower elos, but like, he's kind of built as a bruiser or a tank, but he had a lot missing from his kit, because he was like really easy to kite, because he was so tanky. He had like a second life or whatever. Like, I feel like that character was actually kind of designed well, because he was not necessarily a bad pick if you had CC on your team to kind of provide catch for him, because all he had was his leap. And if they didn't have like a crazy amount of CC on their team, he wasn't a bad pick, because he could just kind of jump in and be hard to deal with. But if you had any sort of CC, I mean, you could just stun that dude and just run from him and just peel like so easily. He was just not a good champ in my opinion. Same thing with like Chimera. He jumps in. If you have any sort of peel, as soon as he jumps in, he gets stunned and he's donezo, So
I think we were talking about this one time, Sock, about ambush being a lock-on and that being a good thing, because if it wasn't a lock-on, it was just a directional leap that he could do whatever he wanted, Chimera would be way too strong. So like that's one example of where a lock-on was actually a good thing in the game.
It's kind of funny to me, as much as like Chimera wasn't a good champion, like he actually had like I think one of the clearest design kits, like one of the best kits that Epic designed in terms of like what they wanted that character to be. They're like, we want an all-in champ, so we'll give him like a really short cooldown leap that auto locks onto somebody and slows them so he can stay on top of them. He gets regen when he's whacking on people, so that's more incentive for him to just like run in and do Chimera things. And he's got an attack speed buff to pump up his passive or his regen. So like, I feel like he was actually like a really well designed champ. Unfortunately, like there was just so much CC in the game, because all the other characters are like, let's just like throw in anything we find in the fridge, like let's just give him everything. He's got like a ton of tankiness, Rampage, like ton of like regen, 2-second stun, but you know what he needs? He needs like a jump that goes half the lane, so you just can't kill him. Like, why don't we give him that? People are like, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. And it's like, what? Dude, he literally, his kit has like everything that he needs to like sustain in a fight, and then you're just giving him like one of the best escapes in the game. Like, why? That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, they ended up taking it out, but
yeah.
They just gave him more damage as another slow though. Like,
oh my god, I can't. Like, when I first came back into the game after being gone for a while, and I tried to leap, and I just did that ground pound thing. I was like,
Yeah,
what the fuck just happened? I thought I had messed up the leap. Like, I was like,
because you could.
why didn't I go anywhere?
Yeah, you could cancel that leap like before they change it to the ground pound, so you could like kind of decide what distance you wanted to go with.
Yeah, you'd hit the Goomba stomp.
Yeah, so.
Oh no, that shit was crazy.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other characters too that had like just very strangely designed kits.
Well, they're talking about in chat. They're talking about movement speed, which is something we discussed in the little podcast I did, and I didn't quite understand what Nato was talking about when we did the podcast. But now that I understand, like he was talking about base move speed as a stat, and I think it's necessary. But like Lacal is saying, Sparrow was one of the fastest heroes in Paragon as far as base move speed, and it makes sense because she had no CC, no escape. She kind of needed that base move speed. But Aurora as well also had an equal amount of move speed as Sparrow. Like, why did Aurora need that much move speed? She already had her Glacial Rush. She had Hoarfrost to escape. She had a flip away with her ice sculpture barrier, whatever the hell you wanted to call it. Like, why was that a thing? Why did Aurora have the movement speed of Sparrow? That makes zero sense with as much CC and escape that she had.
No, yeah, it's definitely silly. I mean, I don't. Correct. You play League, right? A.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see. I'm not. They show your movement speed like as a stat, like on your kind of, when you check your hero stats or whatever, you can check your movement speed so you can see like what your movement speed is and all that stuff, which I think is something that's very good. But correct me if I'm wrong, but don't ADCs in that game have a lower base movement speed than melees or ranged?
I mean, across the board, I think so. Yeah, but I mean, weird stuff going on. There's all kinds of outliers.
Right.
Across the board, I think you're right, but I'm not really sure, to be honest.
I think that type of stuff is good for the game because you have like somebody that plays a role. That's just another indicator of like well thought out like role. Roles in general. It's just like you're gonna have like this late game carry that is actually a late game carry, because in League, like you get late game like a 6-item carry and they auto you and your knees buckle. You're like, oh my god, where did my health go? Like even as a tank, sometimes you're just like, oh Jesus, what did I just get hit by? But I think it's good for them to to have like decent scaling, but then also have like slower movement speed and no like self peel or anything like that, because then it kind of clearly defines the role.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think honestly a big part of the reason why CC was so heavy in the meta was the balance was so bad, right? Like all the champions that did have CC versus all the champions that didn't have CC, like they were the same amount of damage in their respective roles, right? Like they just like Chimera roughly did the same amount of damage as a Rampage, especially like late game. Like maybe early game, yeah, Chimera does more. But, like there was just not enough downside. Like in League and stuff and other MOBAs, like if you have no CC, you're generally probably going to be like faster. You're going to have longer range, more damage in your kit, like something to offset that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have that.
And, like,
there's always got to be a
range
trade-off.
Range and move speed's a huge thing that Paragon just left out. Like pre V42, all the move speeds were the same.
Yeah, that's kind of silly.
Were the same too. So like if you have like, I don't know, Twin Blast, like they probably could have gave him less range and like he would have been like a little bit more balanced, because he did have a relatively high win rate pre V42.
Right. They turned him into a brain dead champ after the execution mechanic got implemented, because he had that double shot. So it's like you didn't even have to. Not that you really had to time your last hitting after they changed that anyway, but with him, you definitely didn't. You could just auto. Yeah, and you were getting like every last hit because you're just shooting so fast. So
You remember when Twin Blast was the troll pick in Legacy? Like nobody picked Twin Blast.
Yeah. He had that rocket ult that was just kind of like bad.
Yeah, it was good for wave clear, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
those
a
were the days.
Shark, you're you said Rampage health regen came from his ult was only for a short duration, while Kai's came from a standard passive ability that could apply all the time. This thing is that Rampage's like ult was such a huge amount of health regen that it kind of was just still way better than Chimera's health regen in general. But the other thing that, if we're talking about like CC reduction items or CC in the game, there just wasn't very many options in general to build around very many characters in Paragon, because they have items in League that are healing reduction. So you hit somebody, it applies a status debuff on them that gives them grievous wounds, and then any sort of healing that they get in the next 3 seconds or whatever is significantly reduced. Something like that. I think there was one card, I think it was like Plague Lord Malik that had that effect on it. I think there's one card I remember that you would build specifically for Rampage. But other than that, there really wasn't any way to kind of like build around characters for the most part. Plus, with the affinity system, you're just kind of limited.
Well, and Rampage, he also had King of the Jungle, which he just had generic regen while in the jungle.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like if he ults in a jungle, his team fight in the jungle, and he ults, it's just like,
yeah,
dude,
there's no killing him.
Just run or focus everybody else on his team while he just goes Harambe on everybody.
Yeah, back to the Chimera versus Rampage regen thing. Like Rampages is on a button on demand, and in Chimeras you kind of have to like set up for it. You have to like start stacking that, because that regen isn't good until like you actually get a bunch of stacks going.
Yeah, true.
And which is easily counterable too. Like a couple stuns and that dude's just done.
Yep.
Yeah, I used to own the shit out of Chimeras with Richter, even before V42. Like when Richter was kind of a bad pick, when he was mainly a support, I still would own the shit out of Chimeras, because I wouldn't allow them to stack their health regen, and if Chimera couldn't stack his health regen, he was done for.
Yeah. Especially if he built damage. There's so many like damage chimeras that I've seen in lower elos, and it just like you could tell they get surprised when they just like jump on you. Like I always played like Murdoch offlane whenever I was playing on a Smurf, and they'd jump on you, and I'd just have blitz rush. So the first jump, I'd shotgun him, and of course he's building damage, so he's not tanky. So he jumps on me, I shotgun him away. Auto him a few times. He jumps on me again. I blitz rush away, auto him a few times, and then by that time he's like, "Oh God, I'm pretty low." Starts running, and then Murdoch passive goes off, and you just chase him down. So
yeah, that's a huge mistake. A lot of people, I think that's what really kind of separated, silver and gold from like plat, diamond, or whatever. Is people would build just all damage on their junglers like Chimera or Kwong or whoever. They would just keep stacking damage throughout the game, whereas the higher you got in elo, people would take those characters and build them much tankier and more of a bruiser type hero as the game went along. So I hope they kind of keep that in, because I like that. I like that a lot. I liked having that bruiser hero that deals enough damage to where you can't ignore him, but is also tanky enough to where he's hard to kill.
Right. Yeah, I think League does a good job with their bruisers. But League is kind of different than Paragon, where it's like, if pretty much like most characters, if they get fed in League, like they have the potential to carry the game, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Even if they're not carries, like even like junglers that get fed, they have the potential of being like raid boss status if they're built tank and they get ahead, which is kind of good and bad in a certain sense. But Paragon was more kind of about team fights, in my opinion. Like it seemed like even if you were ahead, like if you still got hit by like one of the million stuns as a carry, you're pretty much donezo. Like, if they played the team fight right and you guys didn't, like, you're just gonna lose even if you were ahead. So I like that aspect about Paragon. Very much like a team game. I did want to say though, real quick, when we're talking about junglers building damage and low elo, there's a specific game, and I wish I had saved it, but we played with this Rampage, and I can't remember his name. We were smurfing, and he built like basically an ADC build on Rampage, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we were flaming him the whole time because we were having a hard time that game. I mean, we weren't flaming him in game, but on my stream, I was most certainly flaming him verbally, And I remember talking all this shit, and then we got into a team fight, and he got a pentakill, and I was like, okay, wait a minute. And then we got into another team fight, which we all died in except for him, and he got a second pentakill in the same match, and I was like, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I need to be building damage Rampage or something like that.
I think something like that though, there's an element of surprise to it. Like if everybody starts building damage Rampage, then people know to just focus Rampage down really quick.
Right.
But if you're not expecting that shit coming and you're like, don't hit the Rampage first because you'll never kill him, and then he's like just in your face destroying you. Yeah, I can see where that would work. Mm-hmm. But it wouldn't work for very long, I don't think.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty funny to watch. I was like, wait a minute, this dude is just like straight up killing everything, I was literally looked like King Kong.
I was looking at some of my old footage when I was trying to just piece together stuff, And I did a video where I used Stinger Boost on Crunch, and I was just wrecking this poor Rampage the entire game. I'm like, man, I feel bad after watching this. He would try to ult, and I would just fucking kill him before he could even start to regen any health.
Crunch is one of those junglers that actually kind of did better in a certain sense, built like more damagey than tanky, at least for a certain period of time. Pre version 42, I think he did pretty decent at being built damage. He kind of had the versatility of building him like full tank or a mix of damage, but Stinger Boost is really good on him, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So I think that gave his didn't that give his like next auto after an ability like extra damage or something like that?
And it scaled with your ability damage.
Right, and then all of his abilities were on such short CDs, so
yeah, you just weave it. You would auto ability, and people were pretty much dead by then. So that shit was pretty damn fun. Hey, who's your favorite hero? Since we got you in here and talking, who's your favorite hero to play?
Probably Twin Blast before it was changed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was pretty much just a carry main, then I started playing like a lot of solo lane.
Oh, right on. I preferred solo lane myself, but I was support / solo lane.
I really wanted to like Drongo. He was probably like him, like Drongo and Grim were probably my favorites in like a aesthetic and like feel sort of way.
Yeah,
they were just balanced like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grim is actually my aesthetically one of my favorite characters in Paragon, if not my favorite. He's just like so dope.
He's cool. Little gremlin dude.
Yeah, that's actually kind of one of the things that sold me into Paragon, because I remember I was looking at like the trailer or whatever when I was first thinking about picking the game up, and then I was like, oh, it's free on PlayStation. I looked at it, and then I saw like this robot dude being controlled by like a little gremlin flying imp thing, whatever it is, and I was like, that's sick. Got in there and immediately picked Grim and just fed my brains out. So.
You always knew when you were going to facing a shitty Grim when he tried to fucking bubble one of your auto attacks, and you're like, oh yeah. I'm gonna fuck this dude up all game long.
Yeah, I remember it, dude. When I first started playing, when I finally got like the hang of it, I was playing. This is back in Legacy, like when the game was kind of like, in its startup. There's still like it was still free on PlayStation Network. I'm sure that like, because at the time I was silver when it was free on PlayStation Network, and I'm sure that there was a lot of people that had been playing it for a while, and they were just so pissed at the influx of people that had no idea what they were doing. Because I saw like a Murdoch like run into tower with his little shield up, like he hadn't used it yet as a pushback, but he just like had it on his arm, like running in the tower, like it was actually doing anything, just getting killed, you know. Like I know I specifically played like mid lane Grux when I first started playing because I was like, "What's this guy? He's like a Rhino. It's pretty dope." You know, and I just played a mid lane. I was playing against like casters getting poked out constantly, and I was like, well, "This kind of sucks." So,
one of my favorite things to see was that when I did casting call, this happened a few times. Was Murdochs that would try and ult people that were in their face, like Chimera would jump on them, and they would try and ult the Chimera.
Yeah,
it's like you were never going to hit shit that close with a Murdoch snipe. One of my favorite things to watch ever.
I'm trying to think of any specific scenario that I like really enjoyed, and I'm gonna tell you what I love to do, because and I was talking about it before. Like I love to play offlane ADCs, and of course like it kind of worked at like the higher elos a little bit depending on what ADC you played, like Twin Blast. Or Revenant. A lot of people would play Twin Blast or Revenant offlane, but lower Eli just play like Murdoch offlane. And what you could do is you could just like you could poke somebody. So you know when they were coming up and farming, you could poke somebody and let the minions aggro you, pull them back to your tower when they did that, and then as soon as they reset, started attacking their minions, you could poke them again. Do the same process. What would end up happening is that you would stack 2 waves on each other to their one, basically. And then at that point you just like get low, you know, just walk up and take some stupid trades, get low, and then let them get like a little cocky, and then they'd all in you, and then they just get shredded by like 20 minions, you know. And like I love doing that. It worked like so frequently. I love seeing that stuff. So
all right, I think that's about it for this little stream. I usually don't like to stream for more than an hour, and it's been about an hour and 20 minutes now, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Everybody that joined me in the chat, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming and expressing your thoughts. We got A in here right now. Thanks for coming, dude. And of course, shout out to Sockap. You can check him out on Twitch. Was it Twitch slash Sock? Twitch slash Sockap?
Yeah, twitch.tv/Sockap.
Yeah, go check him out. He hosted For the Minions with us, and he's been ever since then one of my favorite people to just hang out and bullshit about Paragon with. So
oh shit, dude! Thanks, man.
Yay. You're welcome.
It's just because we're both old and from the country.
From the country, yeah. So that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. You guys have a great day. I'm going to go ahead and close down the stream.